Hi Calvary kids, Pastor Ruth here. It's been a little bit of a crazy week for me, so this video is being filmed from my apartment, which means you are all getting to see that my Christmas tree is unfortunately still up. The Christmas lights we have all year round because our apartment doesn't have great lighting. But yes, it is now February and my Christmas tree is still up. Maybe the shame of knowing that you guys all know this now will encourage me to take it down. We'll see. I think last year I left my Christmas tree up till April, but maybe I'll take it down this weekend. So today we're going to be talking about a story in the Bible where God asked someone to do something pretty amazing, pretty scary, but the cool thing is that God believes in us. And when he asks us to do something really awesome and maybe a little scary, he's not asking us to do it alone. He's asking us to do it with him. He never leaves us. So first, I'm sure you guys all have things that you're good at, right? Like my brothers are crazy good at basketball, both of them, which is really cool. But when I was a kid, we would always go to the park. Even when I was in high school, they would always want to practice. And they still do this. They'll still go to the park sometime by our house and just shoot baskets forever. Or, play a couple pickup games. And I would always want to be part of it because I love my siblings, I love my brothers, and so I just wanted to be part of it. Even though I was awful. And I still am awful. Listen, if any of you have been even near me in the activity center when we're shooting baskets before or after the lesson, man, you know that it's bad. The last time I genuinely played a basketball game was with our youth students over the summer. And I was so bad and so uncoordinated that I dropped my phone out of my pocket and the back of it completely shattered. So I tried to stay away from basketball. But when I was a kid, I loved just doing stuff with my brothers. But if we had to pick teams, it was always a rough time because, I would always get picked last consistently, which I was okay with. I knew I was bad at it. But it's never fun to be picked last. So what are some things that you guys are good at? Maybe you've had to pick sides and pick teams, but maybe you've been nervous that you were going to be last too. Well, our Bible story today is about a man named Gideon who seemed like he was kind of from the last group, the lowest group. He seemed like he was from a tribe of Israel that would always get picked last. So in our last video, we talked about the manna, and since then the Israelites, were wandering through the desert, and then God gave them their promised land. Joshua led them to the promised land, and now they're in the promised land. But what happened was when Joshua passed away, they kind of forgot about God. Their families just went on with their lives. The Israelites kind of forgot about all the amazing things he did for the people, and they started living against the things that God had said. And so in between this, as they had fallen away from God, they eventually came back to God and realized that they needed help. And so that entered a period of time in the Bible called the Judges. And so when the Israelites got to the promised land, they didn't have like a main leadership figure. They didn't have someone leading the way like a king or a president. And so they cried out to God and asked for his help, and God started the time of the Judges, which basically was he would raise people up in leadership, and they would be called judges, and they would lead the people towards closer to God. They would lead the people and guide them to God, kind of like a tour guide. Not really, but like they would guide the people to God, and they would remind them, they would steer them this way if they were starting to go off to the left. And so it's awesome. When there was a judge alive and present and doing that, things went well. They were leadership. Sometimes they had to lead them into battle. Sometimes they didn't. But in between those judges, when one would pass away and before another one was chosen or risen up, before God rose up another one, the Israelites would get into a mess and trouble again when they didn't have their leadership. And so this was in one of those times. In between the judges, there wasn't a central figure that could lead them, and that's where our story picks up. So we're going to read today about a man named Gideon. And so if you guys could open your Bibles with me to Judges chapter 6. We're just going to do verses 1 through 2. And this is about, so basically we're picking up the story, and you're going to notice that there are these people called Midianites. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'm not sure. And they were basically kind of like bullies. They would pick on the Israelites so badly that the Israelites had to like run and hide. And so some of the Israelites even had to hide in caves. And the Midianites would steal all the Israelites' food and all of their animals so that there wasn't anything for them to eat. The Israelites cried out to God for help. They needed help. And that's when Gideon enters the story. Now, Gideon is our hero of the story, but he starts off not in a hero way. He starts out hiding. So I don't know about you guys, but when we get scared, if we're in a situation where we're scared, we want to leave that situation, or we want to run and hide. And that's what Gideon did. And so, you may be thinking, wait, I thought you said he was the hero. Why is he hiding in the beginning? Well, that's because God doesn't look at what we look at. If God was to pick somebody from the group, or even just Gideon's family, God wouldn't have picked Gideon to save the Israelites. Because Gideon was from one of the 12 tribes of Israel, but he was from the one that was considered the lowest or the least. He was from the tribe of Israel that if there was a game of pickup basketball, that tribe would get picked last. And then in his own family, if his own family decided to play a game of pickup basketball, Gideon himself would be picked last. So he kind of viewed himself as like the lowest of the low. That's what Gideon thought about himself. But God chose Gideon to be the turning point in this constant terrorization of the Midianites. And so God found him pressing grain in a wine press, which, he was a little scared. And so he was in a wine press pressing grain, but why would you do that in a wine press? And then it was just all this, some people think, I remember my professor talking about Gideon in college, basically like Gideon was hiding. He was doing something, but he was kind of hiding. And so imagine, you're trying to get some chores done or whatever, and you have to run and hide from the Midianites, and it's such a normal thing that you do this all the time. So you just take all this stuff with you, and you're going and you're hiding, and then it's kind of like you're just doing homework. And then all of a sudden, the angel of the Lord appears, and he's calling you a mighty hero. What would be your response? That's crazy. Gideon was confused. He asked the angel why the Israelites were in so much trouble if God was really with them. So not only is Gideon confused that why would I be chosen as the mighty hero? He's thinking he's the lowest of the low. And then he's thinking, if God really is with us and you're this angel of the Lord talking to me and you're real, and maybe he had some doubts beforehand. He's like, man, if you really are real, why do we keep running into trouble? Why do the Midianites keep terrorizing us if you're real? And then he kind of got a shock, because the angel of the Lord told Gideon that he was being sent to defeat the enemy and rescue Israel. And Gideon was afraid. So Gideon was basically like, hey, you're an angel of the Lord. If God's with us, why do we have all these problems? And the angel of the Lord is basically like, well, Gideon, I'm here because you're going to solve those problems. God is going to go with you, and you're going to save the Israelites. And Gideon was terrified. I mean, I would be terrified too. You see, he didn't feel very important. We talked about how he was the weakest from his family and how he just seemed like no one would pick him. So why was he being chosen? But God believed in Gideon. But Gideon still wasn't convinced. God believed in him, but Gideon thought, I don't know, you maybe don't know about me. You maybe don't know who I am. And actually, this angel of the Lord appearing before me, it's not enough. I need another sign from God. Imagine an angel of the Lord appears to you and you're still not convinced. He really didn't think he was right for the job. But God still believed in him, and so Gideon asked God to prove it again. And God proved it again. And we're not really gonna... So how God proved it was Gideon said, look, I'm going to completely set out this fleece in the evening. And which is kind of like, let's say you take, your sweatshirt or a blanket, and you're going to set out this fleece in the evening, and you're going to ask God to make the fleece wet in the morning, like it does, like with morning dew on the ground, but keep all the ground around it dry. So Gideon's basically saying, like, if you really want me to do this, and you're serious, I'm going to set out this blanket on the ground, and when I wake up in the morning, I want it to be wet, because that's what happens to ground outside in the morning. There's, it gets wet in the morning sometimes, but I don't want anything around it to be wet. I want it to just be the blanket. So he gets up. What do you think happened? The fleece was wet and all the ground around it was super dry. But Gideon, he's still not convinced, even though God did this miracle. And he says, okay, let's do the opposite. Now, I'm going to set this out, and I want all the ground around this to be wet. But when I wake up, I want this to be completely dry. I want this fleece to be completely dry. And so Gideon got up, and what do you think happened? God proved himself again that he was choosing Gideon. Gideon did not believe in himself. He did not think he could do it. He thought God was making the wrong choice. And he was trying to prove God and show him, like, hey, give him an opportunity, second chance. And sometimes I think we feel like that, right? Sometimes it's like, man, you know, God says that I'm his child and he loves me and he has great things for me. But man, he doesn't know what I did at school last week. Or man, he doesn't know the way I treat my grown-ups at home. Or man, he doesn't know the fact that I'm the worst out of my siblings and I don't get picked every time and people don't see me as anything more than just that kid. And Gideon felt that way. He felt like the lowest of the low. But God proved to him time and time again that he believed in Gideon. And you know what? That was all it took. Gideon didn't have to be the strongest or the biggest or the bravest or the most popular. All he needed was God to believe in him and to go with him. And what do you think ended up happening in that story with Gideon? They won. Gideon led the Israelites to victory. Not because he was the most qualified, not because he had the most money, not because he was the coolest kid, but because God believed in him, and that was all it takes. And God believes in you guys too. He believes in you and he believes in your grown-ups. Sometimes it feels like we don't meet the expectations. Sometimes it feels like, man, you know, I'm not the coolest kid at school. I always get picked last. Or nobody eats lunch with me. Or all these things. But really all it takes is for God to believe in us. And God believes in you guys. You guys are going to do awesome, great things. You can do things that you thought were scary. You can invite kids to church. You can be nice to the kid who's always mean to you. You can do all these things that seem scary because God believes in you and he's with you. So that's what I want you guys to take away. That's our faith fact, that God believes in you and he's going to do great things in your life, whether you always get picked last on the basketball court or not. I've seen some crazy awesome stuff. God has taken me to so many different places. And if I just viewed myself the way that everyone viewed me on the basketball court, I wouldn't have gone anywhere. I wouldn't have gone on any missions trips. I wouldn't have worked at a church. I wouldn't have done anything. I would have just stayed at home in my parents' basement and just sat around because I didn't feel like anyone believed in me. But God believes in me and God believes in you, and you guys are going to do awesome things. That's our faith fact for today. So thank you guys for watching. I apologize that there wasn't a video last week. My brother got married and I totally forgot to film a video. But rest assured, there will be a video next week too. So I'm super thankful for you guys. Thanks for watching and I will see you next week.